في الدين. My dear respected brothers and sisters in Islam, I'm back. I was out of town for a few weeks to be with my mother. Alhamdulillah, she's doing well. And I'll be here for now, inshallah, continuing our halaqah, our khatara. We are still on the chapter of sabr in the book of the miscellaneous topics in Riyadh al-Salihin. Today's hadith actually has a few different narrations, and we're going to give the longer one of it. It's the same incident, but it had multiple narrations. A very beautiful hadith, and it actually highlights many very, very lovely aspects of. You'll see inshallah in the hadith as we go over. So it was narrated in. There's a narration both in Bukhari and in Muslim. The one in Muslim is longer and has more details, so I'll focus on that one. The narration in Muslim says, the son of Abu Talha, radiallahu anh, who was born to Sulaym, had passed away. And so she, Sulaym, said to the members of the family, "Do not tell Abu Talha about his son until I mention it to him myself." So she didn't want anyone to say anything to Abu Talha about the passing of his son. Abu Talha came home and she gave him supper. He ate and he drank, and then she adorned herself and beautified herself in the best way she ever did, and they slept. And when she saw that he was, at ease, comfortable, and satisfied, she said, "Oh Abu Talha, if someone borrows something from another family, and then the members of that family asks for its return, would they refuse to give it back to them?" And he said no. And so she said, "Then hope for the reward for your son." And what's missing in this narration is that he asked about his son when he came home because his son was sick. And so she had replied in the other hadith, "Your son is better than before," implying that he's no longer suffering, he's passed away and gone and returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, but of course she said it in a way not to make him think anything to worry until she had a chance to explain to him. So Sulaym is trying to prepare Abu Talha for the sad news of the loss of his son. However, so she says, "Then hope for the reward from your son." Abu Talha immediately understood what that meant, but so he got angry. And he said, "You left me uninformed until I got into this state with you? And then you told me about my son?" So he went to Rasulullah ﷺ, and he told him about what happened, as if perhaps to complain, like, "Oh, my wife, she did this, Ya Rasulullah." And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "May Allah bless that night that you spent together." So the narrator continued, actually that night, Sulaym became pregnant from that night with her husband together. And so when the Prophet ﷺ was in the course of a journey and she was with him, when Rasulullah ﷺ used to come back from a journey, he would not enter it during the night, and the people when came to Medina, she started to feel the labor pains. So Abu Talha remained with her, and Rasulullah ﷺ proceeded on. So in other words, one night, both Abu Talha and Sulaym were traveling with the Prophet ﷺ, and that's when she began to give birth, right as they were about to enter Medina. So when the people came near to Medina, she felt the pain, and then Abu Talha said, "Ya Rabb, you know that I would love to go along with the Prophet ﷺ when he goes out and enter along with him when he enters, but I have been detained as you see." In other words, Abu Talha, he feels guilty to not be able to accompany the Prophet ﷺ returning back into Medina the same time as the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because of course he has to stay with his wife because she's giving birth. And so Sulaym said, "Oh Abu Talha, I do not feel as much pain as I was feeling before, so let's proceed." And so she noticed this, and okay, so let's continue on. So she went back, and then they came to Medina, and then she gave birth to a boy. And so then she said that no one should give him any milk until he goes to the Prophet ﷺ. So she came. Anas radiallahu anhu went and took the baby to the Prophet ﷺ, and then the other hadith mentions this detail, so this is kind of mixing between the details of the hadith. So all that they brought with them to the Prophet ﷺ was some dates. So the Prophet ﷺ this is the hadith that explains the tahniq. The tahniq is when you basically, someone that is considered righteous in the community, whether of course at the time of the Prophet ﷺ it was him, but it could be the imam, it could be the community leader, someone that the people consider to be a righteous person will take the date and chew on it, and then wipe that in the mouth of the baby. And this is one of the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And this hadith is the hadith that explains that sunnah, in fact. And if it's anyone, it could be the father. The father could do it. I did that with my sons, for example, my children. So let's wrap all of this up, because it's a beautiful hadith, a beautiful story, very interesting, because it's one of the many hadith that highlights the extreme intelligence and wisdom of the Sahabiyat, the female companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Sulaym knew that Abu Talha would be upset with the loss of his son. Who would not be? And she wanted to find out, how can I best break the news to him? Well, let me, not tell him just when he comes back home, because there's nothing that he can do. Let's have the night together. Perhaps, and it must be that her thinking was, she was hoping that Allah would cause another child to come from the night that they would spend together. So this is part of her intelligence, and she must have made dua for that. You can imagine all of these things, the good wife is always thinking in these ways. And so she planned for it, she made herself beautiful for him, he just came back, so they spent the night together. Then she tried to put it in context. If someone gives you something and then later asks for it back because it was a loan, and so Abu Talha said, of course we should give it back if we borrow something. So she mentioned that even our children are an amana and a trust given to us by Allah. Your son has returned back to Allah. But even still he became upset, but he must have understood it. He must have understood it, although he was upset. And then the rest of the hadith was narrated. So the beautiful thing is, we should have wisdom with how we communicate to people. Sometimes it's nice to be straightforward, but if you know that someone could use a reminder, try to inform them with the reminder. The point being, remember, Sulaym, she lost a son as well, but she was thinking, how should I tell my husband so it's easy on him? So that we can perhaps Allah would replace something with what we lost. Replace what we lost with something else. The amazing thing is, the narration in Bukhari adds that this child was named Abdullah bin Talha, Abdullah bin Abu Talha. And this Abdullah had 9 sons. Not just 9 kids, 9 sons. Every one of them became a hafiz. So this was from the generation of the companions and the tabi'een. They were all huffaz. 9 children from the grandchildren of Abu Talha. So in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought a lot of khair from this test that He put Abu Talha and Sulaym through. Subhanallah. So as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Quran, عَسَىٰ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْئًا وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ. Perhaps you might dislike a thing, but in it there's good for you. So subhanallah, when sometimes a bad thing happens that we don't have, why did it happen this way? Maybe the wisdom why it happened could occur later and you won't realize that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't operate on our timeline. Our brains don't have the capacity to encompass everything like this. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the tawfiq to have sabr, to allow us to be patient until we see the wisdom of His hikmah in the qadr, what He decrees for us to happen. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the very best in the dunya and in the akhirah. Before I wrap up, there's some idea that we've been having and talking about. I personally have a strong interest in astronomy, the science of astronomy, stars, space, planets, galaxies, things like that. And the Quran and Sunnah talks a lot about the natural world, science, nature, the planets, the stars, the moon, things like that. I always found it a very big boost to my iman anytime I learned something about astronomy, and it became my favorite topic in my hobby. So I'm thinking of doing, on and off again, a halaqa or khatira like this, but focused on the science and Islam, basically bringing together the topics of nature and Islam, showing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions something in the Quran, but not just about like the miracles and the proofs, but how do we take our knowledge and understanding of the universe around us and couple that to increase us in our iman. And there's countless things that we can do for this. So I'm thinking about this. If you're interested, let me know. But I'm thinking about doing that as well. We'll continue this one, but also maybe doing that one from time to time, something like that, inshallah. So inshallah, jazakumullah khair, subhanakallah wa hamdik, wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant relief to our brothers and sisters in Gaza and the rest of Palestine, to make this a lasting peace and tranquility for them, to allow them to come back to a sense of normal lifestyle, to end the oppression, to end the fighting and the struggling, the infighting, and the instigators of problems that are there in Palestine, in Sudan, in Yemen, throughout the world, in all the places that we know and that we don't know. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to descend peace and maghfirah and rahmah to everybody, inshallah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the very best in the dunya and the akhirah. Rabbana atina fi dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana wa qina adhab an-nar. Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.